Hello, everyone. I'm a little out of whack here. My thing is set up differently than it normally is because my dog's laying where I would normally be sitting. But anyway, welcome to Mystery Mondays. I am discussing the case of Lena Chapin, who went missing 16 years ago today from her apartment near Sligo, Missouri, I believe. And apparently I have frozen. But anyway, so what I decided to do, so I'm not going to be able to see really comments that people make or likes or stuff like that, though I may check in from time to time. I have actually decided, since I didn't um, have the time to really, um, Windows is popping up notifications for some stupid reason, even though they're turned off. But anyway, I didn't really have the time to do the research that I wanted to and make notes the way that I wanted to, and I don't want to misrecall something from any of the articles or the Unsolved Mysteries episode or anything like that, which did air in 2020, I believe July 3rd of 2020. But I'm not really going to even talk about that episode because the article I'm going to use was from before that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to read an article from the PhelpsCountyFocus.com, which was last updated on August the 24th of 2020, though I don't really think it has any new information in it, or it would say stuff about the Netflix Unsolved Mysteries episode, which it does not. And it was originally written in 2016. And as I said, I don't want to misrecall something about this story of what happened concerning Lena Chapin. And I'm going to read the entire article. So it involves Lena Chapin as well as Gary McCullough. He went missing from a farm near Cassville, Missouri. He went missing November the 11th of 1999. I talked about him the other day. And she went missing from an apartment, from what I understand, was near Sligo, Missouri, or possibly Salem, Missouri, on Valentine's Day in 2006. So exactly 16 years ago. Now I need to see if I can find this article. That's not it. It's this one. So I'm just going to read the article. And it says Valentine's Day marked 1 decade since Lena Chapin vanished from Dent County. And as I said, I was thinking she disappeared in Phelps County, but I guess it was Dent County. Um, the article was written in 2016, which was a decade after she went missing, and now it has been 16 years. However, an official missing persons report wasn't made for Chapin until almost 3 years after she disappeared, which I myself find to be very, very odd. And that wasn't made until the sheriff of Berry County intervened in the case. Why a sheriff almost 200 miles away from Dent County is interested in Chapin's disappearance is because in 1999, her stepfather, Gary McCullough, also disappeared from his Berry County ranch outside of Cassville. Check something real quick. Okay. um, in both cases, Sandy Klemp, that was her name at the time, Lena's mother, and Gary's wife, his wife when he went missing, did not cooperate with investigating authorities. And as I said, there are other articles that say that she did cooperate. So I think she maybe cooperated some at first, but then did not fully cooperate with them. She did not report Gary missing until 2 days after he disappeared, and only then because two Berry County deputies showed up at her ranch pertaining to a cattle call. And as I said the other day, this article is incorrect on some information because they actually went there because coworkers and family members had reported him missing, and possibly some friends. And then they saw the cattle were out and used that as an excuse for being there. She has never reported her daughter Lena missing. To this day, Sandy refuses to talk in detail to law enforcement about the disappearances of either her former husband or her daughter, and her third husband were. No, actually, I'm sorry, he was her fourth husband. Her and her fourth husband, which were the ones that were suspected of causing these people to disappear, from what I understand, would just always tell people to talk to their attorney. Sandy and her paramour, which means lover, Chris Clamp, who she eventually married, were ordered to pay $7 million in a wrongful death civil lawsuit in 2013 for knowingly taking McCullough's life. The trial was held in Stone County, which I believe is where Springfield, Missouri is. Although Lena was issued a summons, it was never delivered, okay, this is where it says, and she didn't testify. And she didn't testify in the civil proceedings due to her disappearance, which they did not know, of course, at that time that she had disappeared. A taped confession, well, actually, it says the civil lawsuit says it happened in 2013, so I guess by that time they did actually know that she disappeared, which is not what I had seen before. But anyway, um, da, 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 da. So, yeah, she didn't testify in the civil proceedings due to her disappearance. A taped confession of Lena's participation in the alleged cover-up of Gary's murder also was not played for the jury. And I don't think that he says anything about it on the Unsolved Mysteries episode, but there are several articles and stuff where her uncle, previous stepfather, Albert McCullough, is talking about this taped confession, and he says that he taped it without her knowing. And it's my understanding that if you tape someone without their knowledge concerning something like that, it cannot be used in a court of law. So I don't know why he wouldn't have just asked her permission. I actually thought that on the episode that he said that he did ask her if it was okay if he recorded her, but when I rewatched it, I saw, he didn't actually say that. So the Dent County Sheriff's Office reports they did not open a file on Lena's disappearance until March of 2012. Only then did authorities learn that 6 years prior, she was living with her fiance, Jason Bryant, in an apartment outside of Steelville. Okay, so it was Steelville where she was living. I was trying to find that a while ago, and I must have overlooked where it actually has that information right smack dab in front of my face. But for some reason, I didn't see it when I was trying to find it a while ago. Bryant told detectives in 2012 he left Lena behind the morning of Valentine's Day 2006 with a kiss and a promise to return. However, that evening he instead found her mother, Sandy, cleaning out all of her daughter's belongings from their apartment. He said he never saw Lena again. And there was something that I saw that said, and like an article that I read that said that he told the police that he got up real early that morning so he could get an early start on his day, and then he planned on returning late that evening. And I was like, okay, so you left your fiance alone on Valentine's Day. You got up bright and early in the morning to leave and do the stuff that you needed to do, and weren't planning to come back until late in the evening, and you didn't expect to leave with another man. I would be thinking maybe she actually did, because you leave her alone for that long on Valentine's Day. I mean, maybe and she knew what he was doing, but I don't know. And as I said in my video that I made the other day, I did know somebody that from at least the mid 90s to 2004, possibly 2005, maybe even longer than that, did sell fake IDs and birth certificates and green cards, social security cards, and all that sort of stuff that were good enough to pass for people to full immigration and such as that, and I'm frozen again, but I'm still, hopefully it's still recording and you can still hear me. But anyway, our internet, I don't know, they were working on some lines earlier today, so hopefully it doesn't end up messing up completely or something. But now I totally completely forgot what I was saying, so I guess I'll just go back to the story. Yes, so he said that he never saw Lena again. And there are a lot of different stories about her mom being at the apartment and what her mom was doing at the apartment. Some of them say that she was cleaning intensely with bleach, like they had said at the house. And some of them just said that she was there collecting her daughter's stuff, so a lot of, as I said, was that yesterday? No, it was Saturday. Anyway, as I said, Saturday, there are a lot of inconsistencies in this story concerning stuff that the daughters remember. Of course, they were very young. Brandy was the oldest. She was 14 when Gary McCullough went missing, and Lena was 13. And of course, the other sisters were younger. So, and over time, sometimes your memories about stuff change, like they alter. So that would maybe make some of them inconsistent. The reason it took so long for Lena to be reported missing and why neither Sandy or Chris Klemp have even so much as spoken with the detective in charge of finding their daughter are just two of many questions relating to the mystery of what happened to Lena Chapin and her stepfather, Gary McCullough. It's got a really cute picture of Lena here. You should look up this story. This super, super cute picture of her. Remembering Lena. Lena Chapin was born, and I'm going to mispronounce this. I believe it looks like it's pronounced Linnea. Liehnnia is how her name on her birth certificate is actually spelled. Liehnnia. So that was her birth name, May Chapin, and there are various things that say her middle name is spelled differently. This says M-A-Y, some say M-A-E, and some say M-A-Y-E, and I've even seen her sisters spell it differently on Facebook. So, um, but then, my granny's middle name was also May, and it's spelled wrong on her tombstone because people couldn't remember for sure how she spelled it. And I was like, her name was like, our Gramps called her Blanchy May, so how could you forget that that they would both have E on them? So anyway, um, but so she was born with that name, Linnea, or however it is pronounced, May Chapin, which I'm guessing is probably a family name, in 1985, but had no use for the complicated spelling of her given name and preferred to go by Lena. Chapin attended Salem High School in Salem, Missouri during the 2001 through 2002 school year after her family moved to Dent County, which is near St. Louis, Missouri, from what I understand. Her family included mom, Sandy Klemp, stepfather, Chris Klemp, and 5 sisters. It was Sandy's 4th marriage. She was previously married to Robert Chapin, who is the one I went to school with. He graduated with my oldest sister, Albert McCullough, who apparently my dad knows, and then his brother, Gary McCullough. Albert, I understand, has a farm in the Fayetteville, Arkansas area. The Klemps lived north of Sligo on Dent County Road 4010 on property owned by Chris's parents. I believe that's where they lived when Lena went missing. She did not live with them, but that's where they lived at that time, I believe. Chapin stood out from the family in preferring the surname of her biological father, which, from what I have seen, is not actually true because I've seen, I think, I think that 3 of the girls were Chapins, possibly 4, but I believe only 3 of them were Chapins, or no, the oldest is a Peterson, so I think only 2 of them are Chapins, and I'm pretty sure they both go by Chapin. But anyway, Sandy went by Klemp and had Chapin's younger sisters' names legally changed to Klemp as well, and so it's possible that some of them may have changed their names back Chapin after some of this stuff occurred. Lena was a protector of, this is a quote from Jean Decker of Salem. She lived in Salem in 2016. And this is from a handwritten letter that was submitted to the Salem News when asked to comment on Lena. She said, Lena was a protector of everyone she loved, especially her sisters. Lena really was the glue that held us together. When all 6 of us plus a stepsister had to share a bedroom, she would crawl across the 3 bunk beds that were lined up in the room and read to me. I'm so glad God gave her to us as a sister. She would walk to my basketball games when we lived in St. Louis. She was the one who was the she was the one who was in the bleachers when no one else was. And then Lena's older sister. That was the end of that quote. Sorry. Lena's older sister, Brandy Peterson, who lived in Sullivan when this story was written originally, remembers Lena was one of a kind. And some of this stuff does not paint her in a real good light, but I'm guessing that it's true. It's information from her family and friends. So this is what Brandy says concerning her quote. I don't think I've met anyone else like Lena. This was an interview also with the Salem News. She was smart, she was funny, she was outrageous. She could be very sarcastic and blunt, which is how her mom was when I hung around her, and didn't care one bit what other people thought of her. Also, how her mom was when I knew her, though she might have cared a little bit about that. She was the rebel. She was the one who pushed it. She'd smear tomatoes on the glass door when we were supposed to be watching cartoons. But she also loved to scrapbook. She'd spend hours cutting out pictures from her life and adding comments around them with bubbles. So it sounds like she was kind of an ornery kid. But then, hey, say, weren't we all? At least I was, I know. Chapin was, that was the end of the quote with the bubbles thing. Chapin was not a member of any clubs or sports teams while at Salem High School. Of course, she was only there for a year, according to the sisters. They moved around quite a bit because, well, they say because of their mom changing men, but from what I saw, was she was with Robbie, I believe, for um, probably from about 84 until, or 83 actually. She was with him from 83 until, I believe, at least 92. So that's like 9 years. And her and Chris were together for quite some time. The McCullough brothers, neither one did she seem to be. She was with, I think, one of them for about 2.5 years, and the other, or a year and a half, and the other one for about 2.5 years, I think. But anyway, so the story goes on to say the only photo of her to appear in a yearbook was with her sophomore class. So I'm going, I guess they moved there too late for her to get an individual photo in the yearbook or something. Her straight blonde hair, pierced ears, and toothy smile do not particularly stand out amongst the other faces on the page. However, her friends and classmates say Chapin was unforgettable. And as I said, some of this doesn't paint her in the best light, like even the stuff her sister said about her smearing tomatoes on the glass when they were supposed to be watching cartoons. But anywho, so this next quote is from a co-worker of hers at the Country Mart, which is where she was working when she disappeared. Co-worker of hers at the Country Mart in Salem by the name of Nikki Guffey, which I'm guessing is a female from the spelling of her name. Quote, Lena was fun and full of life. We worked together in the deli. She decorated the cakes in the bakery and just loved what she did. Lena was a beautiful girl who had everything going for her. We would hang out and have fun as much as we could. I remember just going out and driving down the highways, listening to music for hours, and I went, that's what me and her mom used to do. Well, part of what we used to do. Lena was always there for me, end quote. And now, I didn't have a car, so I rode with mom, who happened to be a good driver. I'm sorry, I keep checking this thing to make sure that it's working properly still. And so Joshua Delmain, a neighbor and friend who regularly drove Lena to school, remembers more quiet moments alone. Quote, Lena loved the area around Sligo and exploring the ruins of what was once there. I think that's a side of Lena many people didn't see. She had a favorite spot she would go to when she wanted to get away from everything. It was this ledge at the end of their field above Bob's spring. I remember she would talk for hours. I remember she would talk for hours there about how it was her dream to one day come back and fix up this one abandoned house near Sligo and move there. I think we've all had dreams like that about some place that we have lived. It's an older house in the town I currently live in that I, at one point, thought that I would love to be able to buy and fix up. She was always talking about this old house and how she was going to live there and start her own family. End quote. The Salem News contacted Chapin's other sisters through Facebook, but they either did not respond to messages or declined to comment for this story. Chris Klemp was contacted via telephone, but declined to comment for the story and referred all questions to his lawyer. Sandy's lawyer in Stone County was contacted, and a request for an interview with her went unanswered. So, as I said, they tend to refer people to their lawyers. Um, and I'm trying to think of where Stone County actually is in Missouri. And there's another pretty picture of Lena. This one is from a arrest picture. She was arrested at least a few times. I'm trying to make sure this is recording the whole time that I'm like it's recording when I'm on here. It should be. So anyway, this next section is about teenage turmoil, which I feel is something that most people experience in their lives. Many of Lena Chapin's friends and family members recall troubles consumed Lena with age. And now the speculation is that that was largely because of her supposedly helping Gary, helping Chris and Sandy possibly cut up, but definitely dispose of her stepfather, Gary McCullough's remains after he was killed. And this is Delmain talking again. He says, quote, Lena was a good person, but she was a wild girl. Lena wanted to be a country girl. She really liked going to the river and partying as much as she could. What girl didn't at that age around here? We all had our moments, but Lena was partying a little too much. I was like, I don't know how wanting to go to the river and partying as much as you can makes you wanting to be a country girl. I'd be riding horses, doing barrel races and stuff. But anyway, his quote ended after the partying a little too much part, by the way. So E.J. Schulke was a neighbor and dated Lena for more than a year when they were teenagers. And he says, quote, I remember Lena being a lot of fun to be around. She was a wild one. It was always party, party, party with that girl. But she just took it too far. She was the kind of person who would show up someplace and be in the spotlight, but then disappear just as quick. End quote. And as I said, a lot of this doesn't paint her in the best light, which is why the sisters claim that they themselves did not report her missing was because of rumors that her mom was spreading about her being a prostitute. I think it talks about that further down here and about her not wanting to be around her family because of her drug issues and such. Her wild partying side is what the mom was supposedly telling people. Chapin's sister, Brandy Peterson, remembers Lena's vices escalated once in the county. So I believe she got in trouble a couple of times, but I don't believe any of her arrests actually had to do with like drugs or alcohol or anything along that line. I'll read about that here in a minute. But here is what Brandy Peterson said, quote, Lena fell into a rough crowd in Salem. It was easy to do at that time. Meth was just starting to hit big, and Salem was a bad place for it. There were a lot of meth users in that area who were more than happy to push it on young, pretty girls. Lena was always a bit of the rebel in the family, and I think drugs brought out the worst aspect of her personality. I remember she would flip off cops when she was driving around just because she knew she could get away with it, end quote, which I thought was a really weird thing to say. But anyway, and this what she says here about um, there were meth users in that area who were more than happy to push it on young, pretty girls. Those aren't users, those are dealers. And some of them may be involved in human trafficking rings. And, it's possible that that's actually what happened to her. Hopefully not, but that is a possibility. She may have got hooked up with the wrong person and thought that she was moving down to Florida or out to California or someplace, and they may have just abducted her and kept her doped up and human trafficked her. I hope not, but it's possible. It's also possible that she changed her identity because in that area, as I said, within that time frame, not so I don't know about the St. Louis area, but I do know the Southwest and Missouri area. It was very, very possible to do that, and I think it's possible to do that all around the world. So I think that is a possibility, maybe not a probability, or maybe not real likely, but it's definitely a possibility. That's what I'm trying to say. Chapin, Chapin was inked with a tattoo of mushrooms on her lower back with the phrase "Love Daddy," which I also thought was weird. After dropping out of high school, she became pregnant and gave birth to a baby boy named Culture before she had reached legal drinking age. And I'm like, well, I mean, if she dropped out of high school because she became pregnant, well, actually, this says she dropped out of high school and then became pregnant and gave birth to a baby boy. Um, but yeah, so um, she definitely would have been below legal drinking age when that happened, if it happened like shortly after she dropped out of high school or something. Let me see. Gotta report this comment that someone made because you know how these stupid idiots are. I need to just make it, I guess, where no one can comment whatsoever. I guess it's what I'm going to have to do to prevent that from happening. And then if you guys want to comment after I've done the video and finished it, maybe. But anyway, so Guffey, who was the girl that she worked with, said, quote, Lena loved that boy more than anything, talking about her son Coulter. She had her share of troubles, but Lena was a good mother and she was working to overcome her problems for Coulter, which unfortunately is sometimes far easier to say than it is to do. She wanted to be the best person she could for him, end quote. Dale Main remembers Chapin's home life became tumultuous. He says Lena had to live with friends for extended periods and even briefly moved to Arkansas. So it seems like to me her and Brandy were both troubled kids. Um, which I mentioned a little about that the other day. But, everyone's youth is troubled to a degree, and so is their home life to a degree. Delmain says, quote, there was some pretty crazy stuff in that family. I heard Lena's mom, Sandy, was making it pretty hard on her. I know Lena bounced around quite a bit. One day she'd be here and the next she'd be gone and you wouldn't see her for months. And I was like, well, I guess that's why no one reported her missing for some time, because she had a habit of disappearing for months and not telling anyone where she was going. I'm guessing she took her son with her when she did that. The previous times, I don't know for sure. And he goes on to say, each time she'd go back home, I knew there would be bad blood between her and her mom. Um, so kind of makes you wonder, why she didn't just go ahead and leave. Of course, he might be talking about before she dropped out of high school, got a job, and um, had her baby and such. Court records indicate Chapin had quite a few encounters with law enforcement, though I think it only tells of 3 here, which I would not consider to be quite a few. I would consider it to be a few. But anyway, It says she was cited by the Highway Patrol for speeding in Phelps County, January 27, 2004. Chapin was then arrested in Rolla, December 21st, 2004, for failing to register a motor vehicle and later fined $122 for the offense. On January 22nd, like about a month later, 2005, she was arrested in Stillville for again failing to register her vehicle and spent 4 days in the Crawford County Jail that April. Then in May of 2005, Chapin was fined $414.50 on a charge of making a false report to the Dent County Sheriff's Office, which it does not say what was concerning. And I thought that was interesting because that made me go, well, if she made a false report about something then, which could be it was a true report and they just couldn't find enough evidence to support it. But yeah, it was like if she got charged with filing a false report then maybe the stuff that she said concerning Gary is not true at all. It's hard to know, especially since she is missing and not able to speak for herself, you know. And it says that fine is the last court record of Chapin being alive. So as I said, there might be 5 there, but still I wouldn't consider that to be quite a few arrests. I would just consider it to be a few. So here's the part of this particular story that is about Gary McCullough. I'm sorry, this video may turn out to be like because I'm reading this entire article, making comments about it. Missing in Barry County. 7 years before Lena Chapin's disappearance, her then stepfather, Gary McCullough, went missing from his ranch outside Cassville in Barry County. Gary had married Lena's mother, Sandy, a few years prior. And I believe they got married in 1997, possibly 1996. It was late 1996, actually. And he went missing May 11, 1999. And some of this, I'm not reading this necessarily in the order that it is in the story because I'm telling you who is saying the stuff a lot of times before and then just reading the entire quote together. So Barry County Sheriff Lee commented, quote, "We first heard Gary was missing when a couple of deputies went to respond to a cattle call." So that's what he says happened. I've seen other articles that say that they went there because he was missing and then used the cattle as a ruse for why they were there. Anyway, a couple of cows got loose out where the McCullough family lived. While the 2 deputies were there, his wife Sandy came up and said, "Well, I guess while you're here, I should go ahead and report Gary missing." End quote. Of course, she also was like, "Can I help you guys?" You know, which I thought this was very told that she said that. I guess not. Epperly says Sandy told law enforcement at that time that Gary left home 2 days earlier on May 11, 1999, to go buy a fighting rooster from a Mexican in the nearby town of Diamond, but never came back. And they call it a nearby town. I'm trying to remember. It seems like it's like when I put it into Google from Cassville to Diamond, Missouri, it was like nowadays speed limits, which are faster. Like it said, it was like an hour, 15-minute, hour, 30-minute drive, maybe. That may not be accurate, but it seems like that's what it said. And Epperly goes on to say, quote, "The further we got into that, the story about him going to buy a rooster from a Mexican, the more we didn't believe it. I think that was a made-up story," end quote. Which you never can tell. I mean, people go to buy roosters. My ex-husband did it. Of course, he came home with roosters, kind of unfortunately, but anyway. A number of locals stepped forward alleging there was more to the situation than what Sandy was stating to authorities, according to Epperly and the case file. Now, I was reading something a while ago that said it was a thing about the Unsolved Mysteries thing, and that article said that after they aired that episode of Unsolved Mysteries, they received at least 24 tips concerning the disappearance of Lena and possibly also information concerning Gary. So that was, as I said, July, I believe July 3rd of 2020. So hopefully before too long, maybe we will know more information about what did actually happen and have some answers to these cases. Now on with the story. When contacted by investigators in Berry County, Stephen Turner said an acquaintance of his, Chris Clamp, who you remember was Sandy's lover, was having an affair with Sandy and offered to pay him if he'd kill her current husband, according to published reports and confirmed by Sheriff Epperly. When initially interviewed by deputies 3 days after Gary's disappearance, Chris denied the affair and murder for hire allegations, but subsequently admitted he and Sandy were in a physical relationship. As I've mentioned before, within a week of Gary's disappearance, in fact, Epperly says that Sandy and Chris had moved in with one another at the McCullough ranch, of course. Not that he didn't have a home, his wife lived there. Anyway, this is still Epperly talking here. Quote, he, Chris, was there living with them while we were working the case. He moved right in. That's another flag. We call them red flags, but might not have been a thing exactly at that time, but yeah, he says that's another flag. If Gary was coming back, he wouldn't have been there because he would have known he was getting his butt kicked. So that's another indication we have a homicide on our hands, end quote. And of course, it's Chris he's talking about that wouldn't have been there. And as I mentioned the other day, at the time of Gary's disappearance, Sandy was 32 and Chris was 22. And I also mentioned that Brandy was 14 and Lena was 13. Which is another one of the inconsistencies in the thing here is the age that the kids were. Like Brandy says on the Unsolved Mysteries thing, I was 14 or 13 at the time. Or maybe we were 14 and 13 at the time or something like that. And let's see. Well, let me do the math here. He went missing in 1999. Brandy was born in 1984. 4 and 9, that's 5. She would have been 14 because she hadn't had her birthday yet. But anyway, I'll go ahead and read this here. It says, Lena's sister, Brandy Peterson, says, I was only 13 years old at the time, but even then I knew what Chris was to my mom. Now, as I just added up in out loud, actually, as you're saying in my head, she was actually 14 years old. So you see what I'm saying, inconsistencies in the stories. She can't even remember for sure how old she was when it happened. Because her birthday is in November and he went missing in May. And she was born in 84 and he went missing in 99. So she would have been 14. But anyway, she goes on to say, I remember Mom coming home from work one day saying she'd met the cutest guy, which I can see her saying that here, saying it. She was nervous about him finding out she had 6 kids, but about finding out she had a husband, for crying out loud. So the first time I met Chris, my mom made me act like I was one of her co-workers and not one of her daughters, end quote. Now that's Brandy, the oldest daughter, talking. And I've never seen anything that says exactly where her mom worked at, where their mom worked. She went to nursing school, according to some articles. But I don't know whether she also worked maybe at the Country Mart or at a grocery store or at George's, or nothing really says where she worked. Peterson says her mother continued to manipulate Chris. I mentioned the other day that she says that she believes her mom was manipulating him, and that's why he did the stuff that he did and was involved in the stuff that he did. She goes on to say, quote, Mom would lie to Chris. She told him she was pregnant with his baby and that Gary was beating her, neither of which was true. You have to understand she is a manipulator. Mom is really good at getting what she wants from men, which a lot of women are. It was never about money. It was always about the challenge of getting her man, even if they were married. Of course, it was never about money because she always worked, so she always had money. And she always got her way. But once he was hers, she'd get something on the side and move on to the next challenge. End quote. It's a sad thing for your kids to say about you, right? I mean, if it's true, it's true. And I don't know that it wasn't necessarily about money either because she did sell Gary's cows while he was missing, like a few days after he went missing, about 4 days. On the same day Chris was first interviewed by law enforcement about Gary's disappearance, his current wife at that time, Jennifer Bratton Clamp, told the sheriff's office that Sandy had telephoned her prior to Gary's disappearance, claiming she was pregnant with Chris's baby, which Epperly confirmed. Bratton Clamp said when she confronted her husband about it, Chris said he, quote, had no time to deal with her because he had to deal with killing a man, end quote. And this is according to coverage of the civil trial by the Berry County Advertiser newspaper, and that she did say that he had said that. Those reports further state that on the night Gary disappeared, Bratton Clamp claimed she'd picked Chris up outside the McCullough property in the early morning hours and that he had a gun with him at the time. And I've also seen stuff that said varying stuff concerning that. Jeff and Nikki Allen, you might recall, those are the friends of Gary's that I believe Jeff also worked with him. They came forward claiming he was actively moving his items into their home because his marriage with Sandy was falling apart. And as I've stated, that's why I find it hard to believe the police said that all of his items were still in him and Sandy's home. They told the jury Gary wanted to split up with Sandy after finding her and Chris together in a parked pickup truck. The Allens further alleged Sandy attacked Nikki at the Allens property during a confrontation connected to the marital problems between Sandy and Gary. Sandy ultimately pled guilty to an assault charge for striking Nikki, according to trial testimony. And they should have been able to find proof of that in criminal records, because there should be obvious documentation of that. Leads in the investigation of Gary's disappearance dried up after these allegations were first made. His truck was discovered parked and abandoned on a dead-end road in Berry County on May 16, 5 days after his disappearance. Sandy signed a consent of search form for the family property, but investigators did not discover enough physical evidence of foul play to warrant charges. And this is my deal, like with the burn pile story. If she signed something 5 days after he went missing and they searched the property, there's no way that they would have been able to burn all of his bones, his brain, his heart, his liver, those heavy, heavy, heavy organs. They just don't burn. So like 5 days later, there should have been something that they would have found on the property if that was what happened. Epperly also says Sandy refused to undergo a polygraph test, which are not admissible in a court of law, so it probably wouldn't have done any good anyway. But Epperly says, quote, she looked me straight in the eye and said she'd take a polygraph if a body was ever discovered. And I don't think that necessarily means that she killed him or believed that he was dead. I think that means that, if you do find him, then I'll go ahead and take the polygraph. There's no reason for me to, if you don't know for a fact that he's dead, maybe. Based on evidence and allegations, then Berry County prosecutor Stephen Hemphill, terrible last name, initially charged Chris with conspiracy to commit murder in June of 1999 and should have charged him with it. But anyway, However, those charges were dropped prior to the case's preliminary hearing later that year. The appeal was quoted in the Cassville Democrat as saying dropping the charges was a tactical decision. Quote, proceeding at this point will force me to reveal evidence that might compromise an ongoing murder investigation, which none of that evidence has, as of this time, as far as I know, come to light. So what evidence did he even have, A bunch of hearsay? The investigation continued, but murder charges were never filed against Sandy or Chris. I'm going to try not to make this too long, but this article is pretty long. So Epperly goes on to say, quote, we felt you have to have more than circumstantial evidence to file a criminal case. There were a lot of circumstantial evidence, better than none, let me tell you. Anyway, there was no body or murder weapon found. We hoped that one day this case was going to come out by the children talking. I thought that was what was going to happen with Lena. I went to interview a former roommate of hers in Green Forest, Arkansas, hoping maybe she'd said something to her. Somehow Lena found out about that and came to the police station cussing me up and down. At that point, I knew she knew a lot about what happened and that it was eating away at her, or she just felt like the police were prying into her life when they had no right to be and bugging her friends when they shouldn't have been. And I am curious about when he went to her roommate and interviewed her concerning stuff, because when I saw the Green Force thing, I was like, well, maybe she got a fake ID and disappeared because she was like, I want the cops to just leave me the hell alone, Anyway, the only charge Sandy faced in connection to Gary's disappearance, as I've mentioned before, I think I mentioned it a while ago, was for illegally selling Gary's mortgaged cattle immediately after his disappearance. But those charges were eventually dropped, Epperly says. And as I said, I believe that actually happened 4 days after he disappeared, which is pretty soon after. And I believe that's ironically, the same time that Chris Klemp moved in with her. So maybe he was like, well, since he's not here, you should just sell the cows. But dude, cows are worth a lot of money, and could have had more cows if he hadn't sold them all. But anyway, I don't know if they sold them all. But anyway, less than a year after Gary's disappearance on April 11, 2000, on April 11, 2000, so like literally 11 months after his disappearance, Sandy was granted dissolution of marriage from Gary after he failed to show up to the divorce hearing. And I'm like, I mean, was it dissolution or was it just a full-on divorce? But anyway, with all the trouble facing the couple being Chris Klemp and Sandy now, in Berry County, Sandy and Chris opted to relocate the family to Dent County to get married and start a new life. They chose Sligo, a near ghost town in the county's northeast corner, which a century before had thrived as the home of the Sligo Furnace Company. But by the 21st century, it was largely abandoned, filled with ruined buildings and bordered with burned black obsidian slag piles of its old blast furnace. And I don't actually think that's when they moved to Sligo, and maybe Sligo is a suburb of St. Louis. I don't know a whole lot about that, but I believe that on the Unsolved Mysteries thing, Brandy and Robin both say, which are two of Lena's sisters, both say that they moved to St. Louis and then they moved to Sligo. I'm pretty sure it's what they said. I'm also pretty sure Sligo is where Sandy and Chris were living when Lena went missing. Could be wrong about that, but I think so. Gary McCullough was officially declared dead March 1st, 2005, at the request of his surviving family members. Family secrets told. As one of the closest Sligo neighbors, Lena's friend E.J. Schulke, who I mentioned earlier, says he never detected anything suspicious about the Klemp family living up the road. Quote, I used to work with Chris in their field, and I never saw anything that wasn't normal. I know Lena and her older sister Brandy clashed with their mom from time to time, but I think that's pretty normal family stuff for that age, and it totally is. From what I remember, Sandy would always bend over backwards for her daughters. I just think if there was something so horrible in their past, I don't know why Lena would have kept coming home after leaving so many times, which is what I said. If you I mean, it could have been because she was afraid that her mom was going to hurt her siblings or something. So she would go home in order to protect them because Brandy did say that she was a protector. Dale Main, who I talked about earlier, says he heard more about what went on in the home. Quote, it wasn't ever a mystery about what happened to their dad, Gary, when I was around Lena and her sisters away from their parents. I remember I was hanging out with them at the caboose, which is an abandoned caboose of the Frisco Railroad, which was on the Clinton property. But he says he remembers when he was hanging out with them at the caboose one time, and her sisters showed him. Well, I'm reading the quote. One time, and her sisters showed me these newspaper clippings about how Chris and Sandy killed their dad, and I was just like, "Whoa!" They were like, "We just told you my mom and Chris killed someone, and all you can say is whoa." And I read this initially and thought to myself, "That's what I probably would have said." Lena then came in and saw what they were doing and was furious to the point I thought they were going to fight. It was after everything calmed back down she told me her parents didn't know they had the clippings and not to say anything about them. Um, so those are, newspaper clippings that were making accusations that Gary had been killed by Sandy and Chris that the girls had. Lena's sister, Brandy Peterson, says Lena confessed to her about knowing how Gary was murdered. Quote, one night after I came back from being in a foster home for half a year, Lena and I were hanging out together and catching up at the house in Sligo. We were having a conversation and then she broke down and started crying. End quote. Peterson says Lena told her Sandy confessed to killing Gary May 11, 1999, showed her the body after she got back from school, and then forced her to help clean up the crime scene, including cutting up Gary's body and burning it on a brush pile. Now this is what Brandy says that Lena told her. And she goes on to say, quote, after she told me, she made me pinky swear to never tell anyone. A couple of days later, now this is the other version of the story about what happened in the pickup truck that is on Unsolved Mysteries that I was talking about on Saturday. And a couple of days later, I was trying to get a ride from my mom and Chris when they were going to St. Louis. Oh, so it was St. Louis. Yes, they didn't live near Cassville. I forgot that. But anyway, they were going to St. Louis. But my mom kept saying no. I got really mad, so I said, "You're going to take me, or I'm going to tell the police what you did to Gary." And this is different than what she says on Unsolved Mysteries by a long shot. Very inconsistent. Lena heard that from the other room and came in with a red face and shoved me into a mirror. I'd never seen her so mad. And see, on the Unsolved Mysteries, she says nothing about Lena in the room whenever she was trying to go somewhere, and she doesn't even say that she was trying to go somewhere. But anyway, Peterson says she cut her finger deep on a broken shard of glass and asked to be taken to the hospital. She still has a scar on her little finger. So, a lot of the scars that I have, honestly, I don't remember how I got, especially on my hands, from knives usually. But anyway, cutting stuff improperly. I used to have a scar across this hand, but I don't think I have it anymore, or I can't see it through the creases. But anyway, from cutting a tomato, with a tomato laying in my hand like an idiot. But anyway, so In Brandy Peterson's interview with the Salem News, she went on to say, quote, I got in the bed of the truck and Chris and Mom started driving me to the hospital. We left in the truck to go, but all of a sudden we don't take a right into Salem. We went we went left down Highway TT and down a gravel road. I started pounding on the back of the glass saying, we're going the wrong way. We stop and the dome light goes off. And Chris gets out of the driver's seat and gets a Chris gets out of the driver's seat and gets a double barrel shotgun from behind the seat, which a lot of people keep in their pickups. So I jumped over the opposite side of the bed and we start playing cat and mouse around the truck. I guess she did say that here too. And I'm screaming for my life. Then the radio starts blaring. It's up so loud it's vibrating the windows. I didn't know if I should run. I didn't know the area, and I didn't want to give Chris a clear shot. So then all of a sudden, I think if Mom's door was unlocked and I went for it, and sure enough, I got in and I grabbed onto her tight. See, there's nothing in this one about her mom looking straight ahead with a dead look in her eyes that she said on Unsolved Mysteries either. And as a reminder, this article was 10 years after, and the Unsolved Mysteries one was 2 years ago, so it was like 14 years after, I believe. Yes, 14, well, 14 years after Lena went missing, actually. So it would have been 21 years after Gary went missing. Yes. But anyway, I lost my place. Yes. So all of a sudden she thought if Mom's door is unlocked and she went for it, and sure enough, she got in. She says, and I grab onto her tight and I grab onto her tight. I said, Mom, please don't let him kill me. I won't tell anyone, please. She just stared straight ahead. Finally, she said, don't hurt my baby and don't worry. We were just trying to scare you. So I guess she did say that a little bit of time passed before in this one also before she said, don't hurt my baby. Um, and said, don't worry. We were just trying to scare you. But as inconsistent as the story is, it makes it's like, it's hard to know whether you should believe it or not. Obviously, either Gary and Lena both decided to run off, or something really bad did happen to both of them, possibly because of the same people, but it's hard to know for sure, especially when really your only witnesses are young kids that have probably been told different stuff by different people. Had conversations with Gary's family members and the police and their mom and friends, schoolmates, such as that, which makes it hard to remember exactly what possibly did happen. And she goes, so I'm sorry, it says, Peterson says Sandy forced Chris to apologize back at the house that night and they all shared a group hug. I don't even remember seeing that part, but yeah, it says, Peterson says Sandy forced Chris to apologize back at the house that night and they all shared a group hug. And see, now she says he bawled like a baby when they got back to the house. He felt so guilty. It was all her mom's doing, blah, 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 blah. And that doesn't make it sound like that's what it is at all. She says, quote, she, Sandy, grabbed us and said, we're okay now, right? End quote. After that night, Peterson says she never went home, but tried to stay close with Lena. Quote, Lena and I both joke about it with one another, saying, Lena and I would both joke about it with one another, you better watch out for, saying, you better watch out or Mom will get you. But she would say Mom wouldn't do that to me. She'd never touch me. Up to that point, Mom had always been all about us kids and keeping us together, and everyone seemed to believe that Lena was her favorite child. I never thought she would be capable of actually killing one of us, but then Lena went missing. End quote. And so this next section is on the confession, and I'm going to see how recording what I'm saying properly. Crappy Cox internet. Yep. I know the connection is unstable. I can see myself frozen. Like, well, I can't make myself look frozen when I'm not. But anyway, about the confession. On a summer night in June 2003, Gary McCullough's brother Albert says Lena Chapin arrived at his home outside of Carr Lane, just south of Table Rock Lake. This is also in Missouri. He had not seen Lena since she was a preteen, but now, 17, Lena was grown and under incredible stress. And I remember this is when she was partying hard and using meth and such, also, according to her friends. Um, and so this is what Albert, the brother of Gary, who was married to Sandy before Gary, says happened. Quote, she was shaking. She was so nervous. And I'm like, was she nervous? Was she coming down off of meth or something? But anyway, the whole time she was talking to me, she was on the couch and couldn't sit straight the whole time, which to me says meth. But anyway, it could be nerves as well. Albert was Chapin's stepfather from 1992 to 1996, so actually that's 4 years. Before his wife Sandy left him for his brother Gary. Quote, I loved those girls like they were my own, Albert says. Quote, growing up, Lena was always loyal to Sandy, and Sandy rewarded her for that. As I said, it's believed that Lena was Sandy's favorite. She'd always be the first one chosen to go to the store and things like that. Lena was also always the one who kept her secrets for her. When I asked those girls if it was true that Sandy and my brother were fooling around together, it was Lena that was doing all the talking, trying to make up excuses for her, end quote, which is not necessarily because Sandy coached her to do so. It could just be because she wanted to protect her mom, you know. That night, Chapin told Albert she knew the truth of what happened to his brother 4 years previous. Was it 4 years? I guess it was. On May 11, 1999, when Lena was 13. So, see, Brandy and Lena couldn't have both been 13 because they weren't twins. Anywho. Knowing the significance of the conversation, Albert recorded it without Lena's knowledge, and today a copy still exists at the Berry County Sheriff's Office, according to Sheriff Mick Epperly. And as I said, it's my understanding that if you record someone without them having knowledge that you're recording them, it cannot be used in a court of law. And well, unless perhaps you're law enforcement, because I know they can. Or actually, they probably can't, but they can use it to get you to confess the fact that they have it recorded. Pardon me. So this is an interview session here now between Albert and Lena. He says, I asked her straight out, Lena, I want to know who killed my brother. Her answer was one word, Mom. An official transcript of the tape obtained from the Berry County Sheriff's Office by the Salem News confirms Albert's claim. Albert, well, who killed Gary? Lena, Mom. On tape, Chapin claims she and her sisters arrived home from school May 11, 1999 to find their mom waiting for them at the bus stop. Lena says Sandy sent her sisters to do chores at the family's barn and brought her inside where Gary's body was sprawled out on a bedroom floor. So, here's one of the issues with the Unsolved Mysteries deal again. It says that the girls went home from school. Sandy was at the house and had the door locked, which was unusual. And whenever they knocked on the door, she was cleaning the floor with something that smelled like bleach water. So this says she met them at the bus stop and sent all of them to do chores except for Lena. And on the Unsolved Mysteries one, I'm pretty sure that, well, I know that Brandy says that it was her chore for the day to milk the cows. And I'm pretty sure that she says that the other sisters did not have chores that day. And Lena here says that Gary's body was sprawled on the bedroom floor. Yet, as I mentioned Saturday when I was doing this, which is coming up down here a little ways, she also says that um, he was in the living room when their mom shot him, supposedly. So anyway, um, this is a this is Lena on the recording here. Quote, Sandy, was crying, and all she wanted to say was, I can't believe this happened. I can't believe this happened, which made me go, well, maybe it was an accident then. If she's saying, I can't believe this happened, that doesn't sound intentional to me whatsoever. And that's all she'd say. The whole time when she was freaking out and telling me, she was bawling and saying, I can't believe this happened. And see, that's not someone that doesn't have any emotions, that freaking out continuously saying, I can't believe this happened, right? And it also could have been that Chris shot him and she was freaked out and like, I can't believe this happened, right? So Lena goes on to say, and I ask her, I'm like, I want to see. I didn't believe it. Yet she just got through saying that there was a body sprawled out on the bedroom floor, right? Yeah. So she said his body was sprawled out on the bedroom floor, and now she's like, I told her I wanted to see it. I didn't believe it. Well, if you saw the body sprawled out on the bedroom floor, there it was, right? Um, which a meth mind is a crazy mind. Not bad talking to her, just I have known people who have done meth, and sometimes they talk crazy out their head, stuff that is not even going on. That so anyway, she goes on to say, you know, when you think to yourself, okay, there's a dead person in your house, you're not thinking, okay, come on now, whatever. It's just like, I want to see. And I was like, no, like, I need to get the hell out of here, call the cops is what I would be thinking. But anyway, so she goes on to say, she wouldn't let me see. Though, remember, she said that he was sprawled out on the bedroom floor a while ago. She had her door locked. I said, I want to see. I want to see it right now. I know if I had a seen the whole thing, I would have flipped out. And she's talking about if she'd seen him get shot and such, she would have flipped out. And she goes on to say, I would have flipped out, but there was a crack in the door, and I looked and I saw it, and I completely went crazy. I started spazzing out on her, and I went, what the hell happened? What happened? End quote. So there's also another point where she says, they say that her and the other girls were sent to their room, I believe shortly after they got home, and Lena was laying in front of was sitting in front of the bedroom door. The mom had told her to sit there, so she was sitting in front of the bedroom door, and eventually laid down, and she looked through the crack underneath the door and saw his body laying out in the living room. Is what another thing statement that she made, or that she supposedly made, said. So yeah, here, she says there was a crack in the door, and I looked and I saw it, and I went completely crazy. And she was supposed to have been in the living room at this point, looking into the mom's bedroom, not in the bedroom looking into the living room, as the other article said. Lena told Albert she believed Sandy shot Gary while she sat on the living room. I'm sorry, while he sat on the living room couch eating a plate of scrambled eggs. Lena went on to say she then helped her mother methodically clean up the murder scene over the course of 2 days while her sisters went to school. Chapin said they pulled up carpets, bleached the floors, and that Gary's body was burned on top of a brush pile. I thought that it said a burn pile, like where they burnt their trash. Like there was something I thought it said here that I haven't seen it say yet. Maybe it's further down here. Um, School records obtained by law enforcement indicate Chapin was not in school May 12 and left school early on May 13, Epperly confirms. And May 13th was the day that the police went out to the McCullough ranch. And when they were there fixing to put the cattle up, from what I understand, Sandy pulled up in a pickup and had Lena with her, but it's possible she had a doctor's appointment or something. So, um, this is Lena's confession, continuing, quote, "If you want something of Gary's to stick in the ground, there is nothing left. He was burned, completely burned, and everything that was, left at the burn pile was put in buckets and spread all over. So I don't remember where they're at. I was there. I am the only one that knows. I am the only one that knows exactly what happened, but there is nothing left. There is nothing left. I burned my fingers. I burned a few of my fingers picking up ashes and bones." End quote. It says during the conversation, Lena explained why she participated. Quote, "The whole thing could make me sound like a bad person, but what was I supposed to do? I would have never done it, but I was thinking, I got these sisters, and if I'm going to get caught, I better help mom with it. Now, I wouldn't want anything bad to happen to my mom because she's got those kids and she takes very good care of them. But I do have a little bit against her because she doesn't. I don't have a mom anymore. So she's like her mom like went into shock and shut down basically emotionally after. Um, I'm sure she became severely depressed and it changed who her mom was. So she's saying, I don't have a mom anymore because of what happened. Lena also said the cover up had a traumatizing effect on her. Quote, "At nighttime, it cost me sleep. I just wasn't myself after that. I had trouble eating. I had trouble going to my room to sleep. They didn't know why. I sat there thinking to myself, God, if only they knew." Um, and that's what I was saying. Some of the other things said that she was in the bedroom when she saw his body, and to me, that one would make more sense with her not wanting to be in her room. But so later in the confession, so it appears there's some of it left out in this article, but later Lena said, quote, "I think I'm already going crazy." I mean, you were using meds, so yes, you were going crazy. And she also said, "I think I've already gone crazy over this. It's just drove me insane." End quote. And, she very possibly was only using meth because of what she had gone through. Because a lot of people think that if you use drugs, it will help you. It helps get rid of your problems. And I never used drugs myself because I was like, it'll bring problems into my life. I probably should have stopped at the first of this one. But I'm going to stop before I start this other one, and I guess I'll continue on this next Monday, or possibly even do that one tomorrow. Um, just read the rest of it for you guys. I lost where I was at. Oh, no, I didn't. Um, she told Albert she was confessing because his family had treated her and her sisters well, and she knew they were suffering from not knowing what had happened to Gary. After recording the confession, Albert contacted the Berry County Sheriff's Office and turned the evidence over to them. Um, and here is a quote from Sheriff Epperly concerning the potential murder charges. He said, quote, "It looked like we had something really concrete and solid to work on. Lena told Albert a lot of things that I believe to be the truth." End quote. Epperly says when the sheriff's office contacted Chapin, which is Lena, and ask her to elaborate on her confession. A lawyer hired by her mother intervened and convinced Lena to exercise her right to remain silent. Um, Epperly goes on to say, quote, she lawyered up. Although we had a copy of her confession to Albert, we never got to speak with her. The family's lawyer would not allow it, but there is no record of her recanting the confession that I am aware of. End quote. So I think I will go ahead and try to do this tomorrow, probably tomorrow morning around 11 a.m. And the sections that I have remaining are the ones that are more about Lena's case itself, actually, which is Gone Without a Trace. I did not realize this article was so long. And also, after almost 3 years, Lena was actually reported missing. And then there's a part about the detective on the case, which his name is Letchworth, so it's called Letchworth's Leads. And I think there's at least one or two other sections. The section that says verdict goes against clowns, which is about the civil case against them, and one that's called Waiting for the Truth, Hoping for Justice. I think that is the last one. I might be wrong, but yes, that's the last one. So I think when I start doing this tomorrow as kind of a review, because there's so much information in the one that has her confession in it, I think I will actually start with that section and like just read that section over again, because that's a very, very important part. But right now I am going to stop because my video is going on an hour and 20 minutes long, and I did not intend for it to be that long. But these cases are definitely very, very, very interesting, and it would be good to know, especially for Gary McCullough's family and Lena's sisters and her father, the rest of her family and her friends and such, and Gary's friends and coworkers also, of course, and his family. I think I already said his family, but anyway, it would be good to know for a fact what actually happened. Are you guys out there hiding somewhere? If you are, come out and let everybody know. If you're not, I know they lived out in the country, and neighbors are far apart a lot of times, but there's almost always someone driving down a dirt road that you don't know is driving down a dirt road that would have seen or heard something. So, anyway, I am going to go ahead and let you guys go for tonight, and I am going to try to continue this tomorrow morning around 11 o'clock. I do have a couple of things I'm doing tomorrow morning besides that, but there should be no reason that I shouldn't be able to do that. So, everyone, have a great whatever time of night or day it is in your part of the world. Stay safe and stay positive. I am ending my stream.